one of my favorites, one of the most talented people I know, Sterling K. Brown, who is literally everywhere this season, including in front of me. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Jessica.
Okay, I want to just go through the things where people can see you for the next, 4 weeks because, well, This Is Us, obviously, but that's now on a little break.
Yeah.
But watch your reruns and catch up. We
No
have to
doubt.
talk about that,
For
obviously. Sure. Waves is in theaters now. It's extraordinary. We need to talk about that. Frozen 2 is my everything. Also in theaters now. And The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is out on December 6th, the new season. So you're in that. Did you, when you were writing in your little calendar date book, were you like, okay, let's have November be like my everything?
I hadn't planned on it originally, but it kind of, as the month was approaching, I realized oh, this is going to be busy.
Yes.
It's going to be really, really full, and it's been really, really fruitful.
Well, let's, I don't even know where to start. There's so many good things. Let's start with Frozen.
Let's start with Frozen.
Because that just had this insane opening.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
How was that? Did you get the call from Chris and Jennifer? What was it like, hey, we want you to be in this movie?
Let's see. I went to go meet with Chris and Jennifer, and they pitched me on Lieutenant Matthias and what his character was and how he was related to Elsa and Anna. And then they asked me, would I be interested in playing? I was like, oh, are you kidding me? First of all, you go into, the Magic Hat studio, the animation studio in Burbank, and it's this is Disney. At its purest. And you see all the pictures of all the different movies that they've done throughout the years, and you feel sort of the magic of everything that's been created in this building, right?
You're there's Dopey.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And so I go in, I talk to them, I said, I would love to do it. And they're like, well, you will have to sing. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And I told them, I said, look, I can carry a tune. I said, between Jonathan Groff, if he's at the top, and Dwayne Johnson is somewhere else, I'm somewhere in between the two of them. No shade to The Rock, right? The Rock is a bomb. But so they're like, okay, so you gave me 2 weeks. I prepared a song from Ragtime. I sang Wheels of a Dream.
Good.
And then I came back, and it worked out. It worked out. So that's it. They auditioned a few other people. They went to New York and met with some other folks. But at the end of it, I wound up getting the part.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Where is your song?
Where's my song?
Yeah.
Right now?
Yeah.
Do you mean in my soul?
No,
or do you mean where?
I mean, yes.
In the film.
Where is your song in your soul first, and then in the film?
In the film, so the song started off, it was going to be something that was introductory because he's stuck in the Enchanted Forest.
Yes.
And originally, he was one of the few people from Arendelle who was in the forest, and he was by himself. So a lot of his sort of monologue he would say out loud because he didn't have human interaction. So the song had a lot to do with sort of living on your own and how to deal with that sort of weirdness. And then they changed the structure of the film so that the people of Arendelle and Northuldra were sort of in there together. And so the song, unfortunately, went away. However, I like to point this out all the time. Jonathan Groff did not have a song.
That's right.
In the first Frozen. So hopefully, in less than 6 years, when Frozen 3 hits the screen, your boy will finally get a chance to have a little song.
Who has got are we ever going to hear this song? Will you sing a line from the song? Are you just going to be whistling it in a backup scene and This Is Us or something, and it's going to be a little Easter egg?
It was never fully written.
Okay.
So what happens is Jennifer writes out words to what she thinks the song is going to have to deal with. So it's a big monologue, and then the Lopez's take her monologue and they say okay, this is how we're going to turn it into thing. So it never got turned into the song because the plot changed.
Right.
Right.
Was it a teeny bit of a relief to not have to sing when you're hey, I'm just, on the soundtrack with Idina Menzel and Jonathan Groff? And
no, I actually look forward to it. After you had to audition for it, I went and I took a voice lesson. So I really prepared the song, and I got to a place where I was you know what? I can sing pretty well. And so I look forward to being able to have an opportunity to show it in the next film.
I think the plot of this movie is so interesting.
Yeah.
And just about it's in some ways very adult and very contemporary when you think about just the history of your land and your country and your lineage and the things that you maybe thought were one way, but then you find out that there's some ugliness.
So I'm looking something up right now as you speak to me, because one of my best friends went to go see Frozen this weekend with his kids. And so I'm just going to read to you like his text message, right? So Frozen 2 is all about white privilege. The war was the Civil War, and Elsa and Anna's grandpa was a Confederate general. It's time for them to own the sins of their forefathers. Destroying the dam is like burning the Confederate flag. The next right thing is to pay reparations. I love it. Then he goes, the revolution will not be televised, by the way. Why is my song, Christoph's 80s rock song, Lost in the Woods? Great work. Da-da-da. Then he says, the wife reminded me that blacks are not the center of the universe, and it was more about the genocide of First Nation peoples and the colonists' massive land grab. So he watches the
Can I tell you, I am like soulmates with your best friend, because that was my Jonathan's song is like, I can't stop singing
It's amazing.
I love
fantastic.
his version. I love the Weezer version.
It's awesome.
I'm in like full 80s slow song. Like it's the greatest thing. But that was I saw it with my daughter. We had a whole talk about it, about, how it's timely in the time of Thanksgiving when you think about, the white people who came from Europe and took over. It was really it's really heavy.
It is one of those things where you take for granted that history is as you've read it, because you never take into consideration who wrote the history. Right? And now these two young people are face to face. They're like, yo, what we have been fed about our people is not completely correct. And now it's our responsibility to right these right the wrongs of the past.
And what I found especially moving about it is that they, without spoiling too much, they own it. Absolutely. They own it, which felt maybe in today's culture in some ways felt groundbreaking and notable, because there's not a lot of ownership of the ugliness of our past as a country in many ways. And I was so impressed with that they chose to tackle that.
Absolutely. No, it's amazing. Like the thing that the storytelling for Chris and Jennifer, Disney at large, is they find something that engages everybody. So like my kids who are 8 and 4 aren't going to be walking away from the experience of the film talking about that. They're going to be talking about Olaf's transformation and his sort of like coming to realize that like he felt pain. And I don't want to say too much, but like it's a really beautiful thing to see an innocent become aware that like their life is more complicated, right? And then there's just big laughs. There's a lot of action.
Yeah.
But then for the adults, there's like this story that's like, ooh.
Yeah.
Like this is heavy.
Yes.
Yeah.
How did your kids react to seeing an animated character with your voice coming out?
They loved it. They had a great time. Like they don't really talk about it too much. Like at this, which is weird. Like they're sort of Hollywood kids in that like, oh yeah, dad's in something else. Oh yeah, dad's in that. Like they don't get super excited. But I asked my son afterwards because he's so close to the vest. My oldest, he's 8. I said, buddy, did you like the movie? He was like, it was great. I was like, did you fishing for compliments from your 8-year-old son? Did you think Daddy did a good job? You're like, you always do a good job, Dad. And I was like, okay, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
You're like, all right, I'm being a little thirsty, but tell me more.
It's crazy. I was really like, I thought I was going to get a little bit more, but it was cool.
The 4-year-old? How the 4-year-old?
He loves it.
He loves it. Okay.
He absolutely loved it. Yeah.
Did they see Black Panther?
Yeah, they both did.
And did they give you love for that?
I had the most interesting experience with my older son. The younger was fine. He's cool. But the older, when I died in Black Panther, he was totally cool. When Killmonger died, he was bawling his eyes out, right? And then wouldn't leave me for the rest of the night. So like, just like word to the wise, if you take your son to a movie where your son in the movie dies, he may have an emotional response.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Because he was younger at that point that he processed it like that.
Oh yeah.
I'm here with the wonderful Sterling K. Brown in Frozen 2, which just shattered records and everything. I want to talk to you about Waves because that is also in theaters now. You're a one-man multiplex. And It's such a beautiful, beautiful movie, and it's almost a difficult movie to explain because in some ways it's two films
Sure.
packed into one, and it's meant, in some ways, a stories of destruction and then of uplift.
Absolutely.
Tell me about doing that.
That's exactly how I would describe it. It's a family drama. They go through a moment of crisis, and you see the family fracture, and then you see the family sort of find their way back to one another, back to a place of wholeness. I was shooting This Is Us at the same time that we were shooting Waves, and Waves was in Florida. This Is Us was in Los Angeles. And so they were kind enough to make the weekend for the film Thursday and Friday. So I would work Monday through Friday on the TV show. I would fly out Friday night. I would shoot Saturday and Sunday, and then I'd go back and shoot the show. I did that for 4, 5, 6 weeks, something like that. It was a really powerful experience for me. Just in reading the script, I had never seen a sort of very complex upper middle class African American family with their particular set of problems on screen before. So I feel like really sort of like this we don't get a chance to occupy this space that often. I love that Trey originally wrote the movie not thinking that it was going to have a black family in it, but he had such an affinity for Kelvin Harrison Jr., who is absolutely extraordinary,
amazing
in this film. So they sort of collaborated on the script together so that Kelvin's upbringing, being a young black man growing up in the South, having a very demanding father as well as Trey having a very demanding father, and sort of blending their experiences into what the script came to be. For me, it's a really cautionary tale as a parent. It's an R-rated film, but I feel like it's an R-rated family film.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that if you went with your children, 14 and up, it would generate a lot of incredible conversation, because I think sometimes we have this idea of like, why don't I understand them? Like, you're of a different generation and you feel like they're from Mars or something like that, but they're just human beings. And with these cell phones and like how fractured we can be from one another, the need to connect, the need to like ensure that there is a safe space for your children to share any and everything with you about their lives really landed on me in a very heavy way. Because the idea of my child having to shoulder some of the burdens that this young man had to shoulder throughout the course of the film and not feeling as if he has an advocate or a way of sharing that with his family is heartbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's also just, as a parent also, it becomes a little an interesting look on how much we push our kids.
Sure.
Versus, or maybe how much you prioritize certain qualities that one child may have over another one. Yeah. And it was like your character's relationship with his son is, I mean, he's a driven dad, and he wants, like, that scene when they're exercising together is intense.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I was also like, you are ripped in that movie.
Oh, thanks. No, he's very fit, and he's very armored. You know what I mean? And I feel like a lot of times when I get into that place of like physical strength or whatever, and like very high, like I feel things sort of like I wall myself off a little bit, and I feel like that was appropriate to the character. I feel like he pushed him really hard because he saw the potential within him and he wanted him to realize that potential. He also recognizes that for a young black man in this world, people aren't going to necessarily be looking for you to present your best self.
Right.
They're looking for ways to dismiss you, to discount you, to erase you, etc. And his father wanted to say, like, we can't be erased. We can't be average, because if we're average, that's a reason enough for them to not give us the fair share that we deserve. So I think that is a conversation that a lot of households of color, a lot of immigrant households have with their children from a very early age. I think that the father learns eventually that you can't just talk at somebody and expect them to fully receive what you're trying to give them.
Right.
It has to be a conversation. There has to be a flow of information where both people are learning from each other. And you see him sort of learn that during the second half of the film.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because, of course, that conversation is imperative.
Yeah.
In many ways. And so it's like when you sort of unravel what his goal as a parent. It's not that he's a bad guy.
No, not at all. He's just,
which is what makes the movie so powerful. I think, because they're just like a family trying to,
just a family. It's interesting too, because like I've had people. I had this woman when I was the film debuted at Telluride. And a woman was watching the movie as we were doing a Q&A. So there was a screening happening and a Q&A. She leaves the movie halfway through, and she comes to our Q&A, and she says, I hate you. Like, I hate you so much, and I couldn't watch this movie, and it was too intense, and I had to go. And I said, will you please go watch the second half?
Exactly. Don't leave halfway through.
Like, please don't leave, because the structure of the movie is different, but you don't get the totality of the experience if you don't sit, as in any movie. You know what I'm saying? Like, nobody gets the whole experience if you only sit through half of it. But like in ours in particular, it's such an interesting thing, because this is not a spoiler, but like the first half of the movie follows the son character, Tyler, and the second half of the movie follows Emily, the daughter character. But like, it makes a really whole picture. The two things go together with one another. And I love Ronald in that he's not a readily like lovable kind of dude. You know what I'm saying? He's not Randall by any stretch of the imagination, but his intentions are good. He is a present father in his children's lives.
Yes. And
he wants them to be outstanding. And he's had things that have transpired in his past that make him hold on particularly tight, that I won't reveal right now. So go see the movie and you'll see what I'm talking about. But like, it's one of those things where you don't know someone's full story, and you see how their outward behavior is, and there's a judgment that you may have. But then hopefully, if you get a chance to spend time with that person and recognize why they are the way that they are, there's at least an understanding.
Did I read correctly that you were a college wrestler?
No, I didn't wrestle in college.
Okay, you didn't wrestle in college.
I wrestled in middle school.
Oh, in middle school. Okay.
In middle school before I started playing basketball or whatnot. But I loved wrestling. I did it for like 4 or 5 years from elementary school to middle school.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, but in this same article that you were in econ, that you were like going to be an economist?
Oh, yeah,
that was, okay. And then the acting just was like, okay.
Yeah, it was on the side.
Okay.
Acting was something that I did all during high school, and I loved it. But I didn't think that it was anything that you could do for a living. I was like, this is a cool hobby. And now you go to Stanford, where your mom helped you get to, and like, you don't want to squander that opportunity. So you have to make something of yourself, right? And acting didn't feel as if it was making something of yourself until it wouldn't go away.
Right.
Like, it just wouldn't go away. And I was like, okay. I'm trying to run away from it. I'm trying to do like this responsible thing, like econ, investment banking, et cetera, but like, it would just kept saying like, but you know you love me, right? Like, you really know you love me. And I was like, I know I love you, but I can't be with you, until I just said like, you know what? It's not about money, right? Like, if you don't have a sense of fulfillment with what it is that you want to dedicate your life to, money be damned, it's got to mean something. You know, and I'm thankful that I was only 20 when I said, this is it, right? Because sometimes a dream deferred can be deferred too long until it becomes, you can't see it anymore. You can't touch it anymore. And it's just something that sort of floats in the background. Like, sometimes when you're young and sort of naive, you have to be like, all right, I'm just going to take hold of this dream and go for it.
It's great. I always think of the Frank McCourt, who wrote Angela's Ashes. He has this great line in his intro of the book. It says something about that it was his dream to write a book. He wanted to be a novelist so badly. And he said, if I hadn't done it, I would have gone screaming to my grave. Yeah. And I always thought that was so powerful.
I can feel that.
I know you're not going to say anything about This Is Us, but also, why are Randall and Kevin at odds in the future?
Yeah. It makes me sad. So
just got back together.
I know. So this is interesting. A couple of things are interesting about that is that we just had our first scene together of the season. Yes. Because the whole time he's been in Beaufort or in LA, right? And so we get together for Thanksgiving. It was like our first scenes with Chrissy, like, although they're just very tangential. And then in the same episode, you're like, we're not talking to each other. And you're like, I boo-hooed. Like a fan. I was like, I love my brother. So that happened.
And he just opened up about what he wants for his future.
Yes. And you see him starting to realize that future for himself as well. And then, can I just, real quick, Mandy Lynn Moore, that's my mama. And she was so good.
Yeah.
In that last episode. I mean, just when in the Chinese restaurant, when she couldn't find her phone. Hope I'm not ruining it for anybody, but I'm sorry.
We all watch it when it's on.
I love her, and I love the work that she does year in and year out. It was just absolutely extraordinary. So I can tell you that two things. You saw that there's a bit of a fracturing, but if you go further into the future, you see everybody at Kevin's home, and that they find their way back to each other. So all I'm saying is, stuff happens.
Right.
Yeah.
And I have to say, Mandy is amazing. The scenes of the two of you, I love that mother-son relationship.
Me too.
It's so I love them together. I love that you've had so many scenes with her this season. I think it's great.
It's been really cool, and it's sort of people, when you get to a certain age and you have parents, and then parents start to enter into their twilight, and there's that moment when you sort of have to sort of parent your parents or whatnot, and make sure that you're an advocate for their best choices, because people are proud and they don't always want to admit things about in terms of where they are in their own personal health. And it's something that I can relate to in a very strong way, and hopefully other folks who are dealing with aging parents can also see themselves in that particular storyline.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not going to spoil anything about The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel because
Okay.
it's all embargo, but I will just say you are in it this season.
I'm in it.
And I cannot wait. You get good period clothes.
I have great period clothes. And I can also say, which I think is cool, I am black in it. And what I mean by that is that Maisel's sort of expanding their world a little bit. And every time I show up, it gets real Afro-American, and it makes me excited.
Frozen 2 in theaters now, Waves in theaters now.
Yes.
This Is Us is back in January,
Correct.
but Kat, this season's been wonderful.
Thank you.
So congrats on that. Sterling K. Brown, thank you so much for joining me.
Always a pleasure, Jessica.